All right, let's talk about creating a configuration file for the TypeScript compiler. So here in the terminal, we run tsc --init. So this created a configuration file called tsconfig.json with these settings. So let's close the terminal window and open tsconfig right here. So in this file, we have a number of settings, and as you can see, most of these are commented out by default. We're only going to use a handful of them. So don't be intimidated by all these settings. You don't have to learn all of them. In fact, nobody knows all of them. I don't know all of them either. Now, in case you're curious, in front of each setting, you can see a description of what that setting is for. So let's talk about a few of them in this lesson. The first one is target, which specifies the version of JavaScript that the TypeScript compiler is going to generate. So this is set to ES 2016, which is an old standard and it's been implemented in all browsers out there. Now, depending on where you want to deploy your application, you can use a higher target, and that often results in shorter and less concise code. So if you remove this value and press Control and space, we can see all valid values. So we have ES 2015, 16, 17, 18, and so on. Now in this lesson, I'm going to leave this at ES 2016 because this is the safest option for all browser applications out there. But again, depending on where you want to deploy your application and how much of older browsers you want to support, you can use a higher target. Now, the next setting we have here is module, which is set to common.js. We'll talk about this setting later in the course where we talk about modules. Now, in this section, in the module section, we have a setting called root_dir, which specifies the directory that contains our source files. So let's remove the comment by pressing Command and / on Mac or Control and / on Windows. So this is set to /, which represents the current folder. Now, by convention, we often put our source code into a separate folder. So back to our project panel, let's create a new folder here called src, and then move index.ts right here. Okay. Now I'm going to delete index.js. We don't need it for now. Okay. So now we're going to change root_dir to /source. Now we have a similar setting here under the emit section. That setting is called out_dir, and this specifies the directory that will contain our JavaScript files. So let's enable this and change it to dist. So when we compile our code using the TypeScript compiler, our JavaScript files are going to be stored in dist or distributable folder. Okay. Now here we have another useful setting called remove comments. So if we enable this, the TypeScript compiler is going to remove all the comments that we add in our TypeScript code. So the generated JavaScript code is going to be shorter. Okay. Now another useful setting in this section is no emit on error. So by default, when we compile our code, even if we have errors in our code, the TypeScript compiler will still generate JavaScript files. This is probably not what we want. So the best option is to always enable this setting. So if you have any mistakes in our code, the TypeScript compiler is not going to generate any JavaScript files. Okay. Now with this configuration file in place, now we can go back to the terminal and compile our code simply by running tsc without any arguments. So we don't have to type index.ts. We just run tsc, and this will compile all TypeScript files in this project. Take a look. All right. Now we have a new folder called dist that contains our JavaScript file. So this was the basics of tsconfig. As we go through the course, we'll explore more of these useful settings.